The conviction of Charleston Stevenson Thompson last Tuesday marked the end of a terrible saga of sexual abuse spanning generations and decades. Charlie Thompson is, of course, the father of Joseph Thompson, the South Auckland serial rapist, New Zealand's most notorious sex offender. Joseph Thompson is now serving a 25-year non-parole sentence for 129 sex charges involving 47 victims. At the time of his conviction, 60 Minutes screened a long interview with Joseph's father, an interview in which Charlie Thompson alluded to the sexual abuse that had characterised life in his family. That interview, it seems, was the catalyst for two of his daughters to come forward and give police the information they needed to charge and convict the 70-year-old pervert. Before we show our report, a reminder to parents: you might wish to exercise your discretion.
The things you have been telling me, I find it's not him that needs the treatment. It's his mother and I that need it. And I would say that to all parents out there. Look at themselves before they look at their children.
He's the face of evil. Charleston Stevenson Thompson, the father of New Zealand's worst sex offender, Joseph Thompson, a monster who was created by an even greater monster. This week, Charlie Thompson was convicted of 3 counts of raping his own daughters and 5 of sexual violation over 30 years. Last year, Joseph's videotaped police interview gave an extraordinary glimpse at life in the Thompson family. Tonight, we show a shocking side of the family that's never been revealed before.
I remember when we first came to Auckland, I myself started doing these things to other people. I started doing it to my own sisters. I've done it to my nieces. There's one occasion when I even done it to my own daughter. And it's just a big vicious circle that just goes round and round and round.
This confession set the clock ticking for Charlie Thompson.
I know for a fact that my father has interfered with my sisters.
I don't blame him for what he has done. It's his mother and I. I can see now, with this interview, I blame his mother and I for what has happened to him.
60 Minutes also played its part. It was our story with Charlie Thompson and his wife Emma which galvanised the daughters into making a police complaint. They were sickened at seeing their father talking on television about the victims of sexual abuse without acknowledging that he himself was a habitual sexual abuser. But as this reconstruction of Charlie's police interview shows, he openly talked about having sex with his daughters.
Have you had sex with...
I have.
I beg your pardon?
I have.
You have?
Yes.
How old was when you had sex with her?
Oh, if I can remember rightly, I think she was 12.
But as the reconstruction of her police statement proves, that's not how one of his daughters saw it.
The first clear memory I have is when I was 9 years old and Dad tied me to the bed. Dad was naked when he came into the bedroom. He stuck a pillow over my face and lifted my legs into the air. He asked me, "Do I like it?" I just closed my eyes and tried to pretend it wasn't happening.
I do know it's wrong. I know I'm the instigator. But I admitted that to my wife, that I was in the wrong and not to blame all the time.
How long did it carry on for?
Right up to the time she got pregnant.
When I was 13, in April 1992, I got pregnant. I knew that the baby was the defendant's. I had not had sex with anyone else.
Were you shocked when he confessed initially?
Yes, I was. I didn't think that Charleston would be so open with me in relation to telling me about the sexual experiences that he'd had.
So you thought... Detective Sergeant Richard Middleton conducted the police record of interview with Charlie Thompson. He doubts whether Charlie can be rehabilitated at the age of 70.
Charleston Thompson has never shown any signs of remorse whatsoever, quite the contrary. He doesn't believe that he has done anything wrong, and that was why he forced the two victims to go on the stand and for the police to prove their case. He's quite adamant that his behaviour is not wrong.
How does he feel about his daughters now?
I don't think that Charleston Thompson can understand why his daughters have come forward and made complaints against him. I think he's bewildered by it.
Was it a matter of denying that he was having sex with them?
No, because he was quite open about having had sex with them, but he believed it wasn't wrong to do that.
Another daughter also made a complaint, backing up her sister's claims of horrendous abuse.
I would be lying on my back and he would be on top of me. He would ask me if it was good.
As the police record of interview shows, Charlie Thompson had no idea of normal moral boundaries.
I don't know whether I was teaching her at the time or what.
Did you say teaching her?
Yeah.
Teaching her what?
Well, teaching her sex.
These sickening revelations are nothing new to Joseph Thompson. They are the warped weft that made the fabric of his life.
In our family, we had no discipline. We had no no authority or anything. The whole lot of us were just let go, let free, we were just let loose to do whatever we could, whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted.
I would ask him, you know, what his life was like when he was younger, but he would just cut off and say, you know, it wasn't worth talking about.
Joanne, Joseph's wife, told us her story last year on 60 Minutes. Her brush with the family left her wary.
I saw the family and his brothers and sisters and the way they lived, and I didn't want to get close to that.
Evil's an old-fashioned word, but is it an appropriate word to use in these circumstances?
Yes, it is, because it lurks right there, right now. It is an appropriate word and a proper word. It is evil.
Kevin Ryan is Joseph Thompson's barrister. He's already taken Joseph's case to the Court of Appeal and lost. Is Charlie's convictions now grounds for Joseph to go to the Court of Appeal?
No, it's not. He went before the Court of Appeal on his own feet, and only on one particular matter, and that was on the 25-year period which he must serve before he can even be considered for parole. Just for my own satisfaction, I'd love to know whether Charlie Thompson himself had been similarly treated before he embarked on the very sad family life where he had these children who love him in a strange way.
Do they still love him?
Yeah, Joseph does. He doesn't speak harshly against him. He feels that he's his father. He's got nowhere else to look. Nobody else is his father.
There's been plenty of violence. There's been plenty of violence in the home.
In talking about Joseph, Charlie speaks volumes about himself. He admitted to beating his first wife.
Several times throughout the years we've been married.
And Joseph when he was a little boy.
Not when he was small, only when he was older. He must be affected by that sort of life. Because that sort of life, he's repeated it on his own de facto relationships.
But Charlie denied that Joseph was ever sexually assaulted.
As far as he's concerned, no. And I don't believe it ever happened to him.
Is this the worst case of sexual offending that you've ever known?
I suppose it would be, yes.
What makes it the worst?
Because the number of people involved, for the length of time it went on, and the nature of the criminality of the crimes against young people.
How many do you think would be involved to this degree?
I'd say about a dozen. But I think back and I think to myself, when I was, say, their age, I could have easily gone off the rails, quite easily. And I would have thought that if I had meted out to me what was meted out to Joseph Thompson and his children, would I have been any different?
He needs treatment now. If he's to be restored into the society, he needs that treatment.
And another thing, does he need the treatment or do we need it?
Charlie Thompson shows a glimmer of responsibility. The patriarchal predator of a family of 18. A family which was shattered when 2 daughters went to the police.
It took a tremendous amount of courage for them to come forward. I'm very proud of the way that they put themselves into the situation, and through that ordeal, they handled it very, very well.
Do you think this starts to right the wrong in the family?
I don't think the wrongs that have happened in that family can ever be put right totally. It's gone too far for that. But I think now that the complainants and other members of the family can see justice being done.
For you, personally and professionally, is this one of the hardest cases you've ever had to deal with?
Emotionally, or...
Emotionally, yeah.
From a personal point of view, I have a daughter of my own, and going home at night and giving her a cuddle and thinking about the case, yes. Emotionally, it's hard to deal with, but professionally, no.
I mean, we like to live in our own little isolated homes and look after ourselves, but we never look inwards to see what's happening down the road. And if we did, we might get an awful fright.
When Joseph Thompson was jailed as the South Auckland serial rapist, it was the end of 12 years of terror. While we can't ever forgive him for what he has done, we can say we now know why he did it.
I can't really say much more than that. It just comes down to how I was brought up. There's been a history of it right through my family. There'll be a lot of denying that, but the history is there.
Most of us probably never consider that the shoes or the clothes we wear, or even the footballs our kids play with, may have been made by children in the third world, children working in virtual slavery. Child labour is officially outlawed in most countries, but in all too many, authorities turn a blind eye. For years, the various human rights organisations have been trying to make people aware of the suffering of slave children. But as Ed Bradley discovered, it took the special commitment of a young Canadian, Craig Kielburger, to awaken public opinion to the plight of some 200 million children. The amazing thing is that Craig Kielburger is only 13 years old himself.
We're talking about labor and the exploitation of children. When a child's forced to work 12 to 16 hours a day.
Craig Kielburger is only 13 years old, but he's old enough to know the difference between right and wrong.
Well, basically, we're told slavery abolished. You know, not 20th century. You don't find slavery in the world today. But it was really shocking was when I was just reading through the different research that I got, and you find the worst type of slavery still exists today, slavery of children.
It all started last April when Craig, then 12, read this newspaper story about a boy his age in Pakistan. His name was Iqbal Masih, and when he was only 4 years old, his parents, like so many others, offered their son's labor in exchange for a small loan. Iqbal spent the next 6 years chained to a rug loom like this one, working 12-hour days for pennies, until he finally escaped and joined a crusade against child labor. But after winning worldwide recognition, Iqbal's life was cut short when at the age of 12, he was shot dead in the streets of his village. No one has been convicted of the murder, and Craig Kielburger vowed to keep his cause alive.
But what made you think you could do something about it?
Originally, I didn't think I could, really. But the only way you're going to ever find out is try. So after doing some research, I just walked to my classmates and said, listen, I read this article, here's a problem. This is what I know, which at that point was not very much, and asked, who wants to help?
The answer, kids.
Okay, all those in favor of this agenda that we're doing today?
Craig started a group called Free the Children. The board of directors meets Saturdays in Craig's den turned command center. They're in daily contact by phone or fax with a host of international human rights groups. Craig has always done his homework to keep up on the issue, but he soon felt that homework wasn't enough. He had to meet the children he was trying to help.
Why did you decide to take the trip to Asia?
I just wanted to learn more on the issue of child labor. I wanted to make sure that we're not imposing our Western culture on these people. I wanted to speak to the children. I wanted to hear their views. Ask them, what do you want? How can your life be better?
Did your parents want you to go to Asia?
No way. You should imagine the look on their face the first time I told them.
We wouldn't even let him take the subway downtown Toronto by himself. So to let him go to Asia was unthinkable.
Teresa and Fred Kielburger are both school teachers. What worried you?
Well, I think how many parents would let their 12-year-old child go traipsing through Asia for 7 weeks?
Yet you did change your mind.
Well, we did, but at first he works on you, you know.
He worked on them so well, they let him miss 7 weeks of school and bought his plane ticket to travel halfway around the world. Chaperoned at each stop by local human rights advocates and armed with a video camera, he went from Bangladesh to Thailand and then on to India, Nepal, and Pakistan.
Was it difficult to find children? I mean, could you get into these factories and places where they worked?
The perception that I had was that in child labor, it's all in the deep, dark back alleys. No one can see it beyond public scrutiny. But the truth is, it's practiced in the open.
The shock for Craig was to discover that child labor wasn't just in hidden sweatshops, it was everywhere. And a boy making metal cups to be shipped to hotels and restaurants. A girl bagging candy 11 hours a day in an overheated room. Or a boy stitching soccer balls. Craig found himself staring into faces his age and younger. Kids who were missing their childhood, who were separated from their parents, tortured for small mistakes. And in some cases, the work was life-threatening.
One shop that I went into, I met one 8-year-old girl. She was just pulling apart syringes and needles, piece by piece, putting them in buckets for their plastics. She wore no gloves, literally, and no shoes. All she was doing was squatting on the ground, surrounded by a pile of needles.
Used needles?
Yes, they were from hospitals, from the street, from the garbage. We asked her, don't you worry about AIDS and other diseases like that? We got no response. She didn't know what they were. At one point, we even saw her step on the pile of needles to get to the other side.
Craig was able to talk to the kids in a way no other Westerner had, as one child to another.
Has he ever gone to school? One young boy who I met in a brick kiln, he told me how his grandfather had taken out a small loan. Now that's 2 generations back. And he's still working along side by side with his relatives to try to pay off the debt.
From 2 generations before?
2 generations back.
Perhaps the most powerful stop for Craig was the small cemetery where he visited the unmarked grave of the child who first inspired him.
Here we are in Iqbal's grave. There's no marking to say who he is or what year he died or anything about his life. It's simply he's buried underneath here, under all these bricks.
Now I know that he is really dead. And the only thing which I think matters is to carry on his memory, carry on his work.
That work landed him in the center of a media storm when Canada's Prime Minister Jean Chrétien happened to arrive in Asia at the same time, accompanied by 300 Canadian business leaders who were eager to sign export-import deals amounting to several $1 billion. The 13-year-old said, wait a minute. He wanted to talk to his prime minister about the plight of children who made some of those exports before the businessmen signed any contracts. But the prime minister turned him down. So Craig met with the people who would listen. He held a news conference. With 2 former child laborers at his side, he helped them tell their stories.
He had been hit by his master with a steel iron rod.
The prime minister could not have anticipated the fallout back home.
He upstaged the Prime Minister during Team Canada's trade trip and catapulted the issue of child labor onto the national agenda.
Back in Asia, the Prime Minister changed his mind about sitting down with an 8th grader.
Were you nervous at all meeting the Prime Minister?
Is anyone not? Like you have your neck out and you have a guillotine quite nearby. There's always a little bit of nervousness. You never can get over that.
He may have been nervous, but he did get his point across.
We, in the Canadian government, are open to looking at new ways to combat child labor through toughening our own imports restrictions.
Hi.
There's nobody Craig won't lobby, from the Premier of British Columbia to 2,000 union leaders at their biannual convention where, after hearing Craig speak, they spontaneously pledged $150,000 to his cause. He and his group Free the Children persuaded the mayor of Toronto to ban fireworks made by children. The federal government is considering a program to label rugs so customers will know they were made without child labor. The Minister of Foreign Affairs offered Craig an advisory position in the government, and last month the House of Commons recognized his work.
I invite all parliamentarians on both sides of this House to work together along with Craig and Free the Children to stop child labor. Let us all applaud one of the heroes of Canada. Thank you.
For Craig, his national celebrity allows him to reach the audience that matters to him the most, young people.
Because I believe that young people can make a difference, and I believe that young people, when speaking it out, do have a lot of power. One of the best parts about being young is we still have our imagination. We still think we can fly. We still think we can go to the moon. There are so many things which you think you're unstoppable yet.
And so, with slides of Asia in his backpack, Craig goes from school to school across Canada, sharing what he's learned, urging other kids to think beyond themselves.
You go to Asia. You meet all of these kids. You get on a plane and fly back home. What did you think about leaving all of those kids there, knowing the life that they would still have to lead?
It was really difficult from the way that you look at it as if, you know, I'm flying back to Canada. I'm flying back to this. And yet, they're still there. Now, that's difficult in itself. But when I return to Canada, I can speak to so many more people. Like, even right now, the reason I'm going place to place, school to school, is to talk to people, to say, listen, here's a problem. I've seen it with my own eyes. This does exist. And you're in a perfect opportunity to fix it. Everyone's in a perfect opportunity to help.
You ever worry that he's doing too much for a 13-year-old?
Oh, of course. All the time. All the time. And it's very important for me that he remain a child, that he enjoys his childhood, that he be able to rollerblade, to swim, to ski, to do all those things. The challenge for us is trying to make sure that all these things are built in around all the speaking engagements, around all the traveling.
Have you ever suggested that he take a break from it?
Yes. Actually, last September, his mother suggested he quit. I pulled him aside and I said, you know, it's your last year in elementary school, and I think you guys have accomplished so much. Maybe it's time to quit now. And I said, well, I want you to think about that. So he laughed for about 5 minutes, and then he came back and he said, you know, I can't quit. The problem is still there. I have to keep going.
Are the two of you activists?
We're not involved in anything, actually. We're quite dull. We're quite dull.
But their life is far from dull these days. The phone rings at all hours. An uninterrupted family dinner is a rare occasion, and goodbyes are routine.
Make sure you have time for fun.
Craig admits to sometimes feeling run down, but says he can't slow down when there's so much left to do.
A lot of people say it's a lot easier to be ignorant and say, I don't know the problem. But once you know that problem, once you've seen it in their eyes, then you have a responsibility to do something. I think that's why people say, why are you doing it? Because I have a responsibility now.
Why you?
Why not? And if everyone in the world could say, why me, then nothing ever would be accomplished. Why me? Because I've met those children, because I've seen them, because I read the story of Iqbal Masih. Why not me? I'm pretty lucky. What else do I have to worry about?
Somebody said, you know, maybe, you know, this has been Craig's calling at this time in his life to do something, to sort of to take up Iqbal's mission, you know? And I mean, I'm very rational, and I'm basically not, you know, that religious. But when you look at all the events and the timing of events that have occurred in his life, the people he's met, unplanned incidents, you know, you almost wonder if maybe Iqbal up there is looking down and maybe he has, you know, in a way, taken over the torch for this year or something.
Your mother said, asked who is directing this thing. She said, I think Iqbal's up there directing this.
Honestly, no, but perhaps Iqbal is up there. Perhaps he's helping a lot. Actually, I'm pretty sure he is.
I want to give you a very special invitation to come on in and join the fun. Come on.
Live in concert, Will Miller and his new Irish show. It'll be a night of foot-tapping Celtic music, songs and laughter. Book now.
They call themselves the Nowra Bog Rats, an irreverent bunch of Kiwi Air Force pilots doing what New Zealanders love to do, playing merry hell with our cousins across the Tasman. They've been there 5 years now, the hired guns and occasional targets for the Royal Australian Navy, which uses them to test the battle readiness of its fighting ships. For their part, the Bog Rats of No. 2 Squadron get to practice shooting up the Aussie fleet, and they've been so effective in their ageing Skyhawk fighters that they're about to sign on for another 5 years. Could this be the beginning of an even closer military relationship with Australia? Well, 60 Minutes went to Nowra for a close-up look at a little corner of a defence partnership where there's more than a bit of healthy rivalry. The Kiwi squadron of ageing Air Force Skyhawks based at Nowra in Australia. You could call them airborne geriatrics. But while they may be 25 years old, when it comes to combat, these small New Zealand fighter planes can really kick some serious... In fact, one of the few things you can say that is young about these Skyhawks is the men who fly them. They're affectionately known as Bog Rats.
We're going to teach them to fly the Skyhawk, fly the Beastie.
Squadron leader John Mathewson. He leads the Nowra Skyhawk Bog Rats.
At the end of the day, we've got a product which I can put my hand on my heart and know operationally is competent and can do everything that's required by 75 Squadron.
These aircraft have been with the New Zealand Air Force 25 years. The design is 40 years old. Aren't they past their use-by date?
No, they're not. And the reason is that in 1990 we finished an upgrade program which was worth $150 million. And we put in state-of-the-art avionics. So inside that aeroplane, we have stuff that is as good as a lot of other frontline air forces in the world. And along with that, we've got precision-guided weapons, just as we used in the Gulf War.
The story of the Skyhawk is a typical lesson in Kiwi ingenuity. Some of them are hand-me-downs from the Royal Australian Navy, sold to the New Zealand Air Force for a song. Now they're back flying for the Australians, but with Kiwi pilots. What does it take to be a good fighter pilot?
Well, he's got to be motivated. So we can get a guy with good hands and feet skills, good brain, but unless he's motivated to the role to succeed, he won't succeed. He doesn't take milk powder to Rwanda, and he doesn't pull people off the side of mountains. We gain our satisfaction from being able to do what we do well.
Well, if you've seen Tom Cruise in Top Gun and you figure that these Bog Rats are all about fast women, fast planes and fast cars, you'd probably get 2 out of 3. The cars, well, they're nearly as old as the planes.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
Right, time to push.
All right, push it, boy. Well, lads. Side up, lads.
But there is a serious side to what these guys do. And quite frankly, they do it much better than the Royal Australian Air Force. That is, to tease the living daylights out of the Aussie Navy frigates and destroyers, to make them combat ready.
The Skyhawk's a fairly unique little aeroplane in world Air Force inventories these days.
Captain Rowan Moffat. He's the head of operations for the Royal Australian Navy.
In New Zealand hands, it's been kept absolutely state-of-the-art. That allows it to fly very fast and at quite low level, whilst they exercise their ship attacks against us and develop their tactics for using the weapon systems that they have for the aircraft. The beauty of that from our point of view is that it provides our ship defence systems with a very small target, which is very hard to detect, and it really stretches the systems that our ships are fitted with in anti-aircraft terms.
You're the head of naval operations. You've been the commander of your own ship. Have the Skyhawks ever got the better of you?
Not a chance. Of course, I'd have to say that. But they've certainly tested us.
We'll believe you. There's only one way I know to find out if these Aussies are telling the truth, and that's to become an honorary Bog Rat and go flying with these guys. But first, a crash course in learning the lingo. Pilot jock speak, so to speak.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll push out in the Charlie block. When we hit the DAP, we'll detonate, so onto the beam. Split S down to the Bravos, come hot, post hole down to the Ulkers, bus for in towards the ship, take the bruiser, and then we'll flow out to the reset point.
Right, and if I go Kermag Yo-Yo?
You're on your own.
Roughly translated, it means we're going to kick the Royal Australian Navy's butt. We're going to attack a destroyer, the HMAS Brisbane. But first, some basic Air Force tips on flying and looking good.
So you're going to get another underpants shot there.
Yeah, I'm seeing you the underpants.
Here we go, son. Flying.
Tom Cruise, at your heart out.
Head big.
Anything past there's big.
Huge. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm a journalist.
Three main aims for us today, though, is to safely familiarise the 60 Minutes team with maritime strike operations. And to that end, we want to achieve some good footage. And the tertiary aim is a bit of training for Brisbane.
Okay, an emergency situation. Just you want to get your body into the correct position, legs as far forward and head right back, and then pull this little yellow handle down here. And
Called up, you may be actually flying against ships that are firing real standard rockets at you.
There's not really any other answer other than I've committed myself to the country, and if they make the decision that I have to go, then it's just the way it is.
Would you have liked to have gone to the Gulf War?
I would never like to go to war myself. I'd much rather keep it the way we are at the moment. However, if you have to go, then you have to go.
But right now, Flight Lieutenant Scott Armour is going in this direction, as quick as he can, plugged into another Skyhawk, practicing for an aerobatic display at an Air Force air show at Amberley in Queensland. But when the Skyhawks get to Amberley, it's raining, and raining, and raining. Billions of dollars in high-tech hardware like the US nuclear B-1 bomber just sitting on the tarmac. The RAAF's 75th anniversary air show is a washout. But for the Nowra Bog Rats, there's always another year. In fact, the Aussie government are about to sign them on for another 5 years.
Well, you guys have been here for several years now. Are you part of the furniture? Are you part of the Aussie Navy?
We are. They were very well accepted, very well received at Nowra. There's a great affection for the Skyhawk because they were previously owned by the Royal Australian Navy. And in some respects, we operate as a de facto Navy unit.
Can you see a time when it, becomes part of the Australian Defence Force?
Oh, I would not advocate that, and I don't expect that to ever happen, but I can see that New Zealand and Australia are going to get closer and closer militarily.